So, when it's all said and done, where has UCLA basketball improved after all the changes? Literally everywhere for Mick Cronin.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoff season winds down, the sports aren't probably sporting like we want them to, but FanDuel is everything and is hooking up all customers with the booster bonus daily. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, where we get started today is kind of revisiting. Why did Mick Cronin do what he had to do? What is he getting out of 8 newcomers in the returning production? What is he getting that is a team that projected to be a contender in the Big Ten immediately? Much better, make the NCAA tournaments, and in my mind, I think is competing for a top 1 or 2 seed line, and at worst, hopefully a 3 seed, right? That's what I'm expecting out of this UCLA basketball team. How are they getting better? A team that, if you look at scoring defense, if you're playing Mick Cronin, you're probably going to have teams scoring maybe in the 60s, right? A good team will keep, under Mick Cronin, would keep them in the 60s, mid-60s, because some nights you're going to get torched. UCLA last year kept teams only 65 points per game, approximately, right? But they couldn't win games. They're still under 500 because the team couldn't score. And even then, they still weren't the best defensively in certain areas. So where are we starting with? We're going to start with shooting. Guarding the 3 and shooting the 3. The emphasis on one highlights a deficiency on the other, right? UCLA overall was so terrible when it came to shooting the 3 last year, right? In the end, a late surge made the numbers not as bad, with Stefanovich's 60+% the last 5 to 6 games, Dylan Andrews making all his shots. But most importantly, the big thing for UCLA is you have to guard and shoot the 3. That's what they're going to get. Wing defense was not fully existent last year, right? Consistently. Adem Bona had to save almost everything in the paint, and that caused them to be in foul trouble. You lose some low post offense, you lose your defender, and then UCLA would play terribly when Bona would play 30 or less minutes. Now, they've got their low post protector with Kyle. They've got some physical bodies down low, some tall guys, but it's the wing defense that must get better overall. Now you're going to probably see a healthier Sebastian Mack. You're going to see Dylan Andrews in another year of transition. You're going to get guys who, in order to play for Mick Cronin, must be much better defensively. UCLA was closer to the 150s when it came to defending the 3. I think they gave up about 33% from 3, which isn't an outlier. But the worst team in the country was about a 39% clip, giving up made 3s in a percentage over the year. So UCLA wasn't among the nation's best when defending the 3. And, of course, the better teams, the better conferences are going to light it up from 3 some nights. So you're not always going to have the best nights defending it. But if you're closer to the 150s and the 100s, closer to the middle part of the country as opposed to decently guarding the 3-point line, that's where Kobe Johnson is going to thrive, right? That is where his all Pac-12 defensive honors, all right, you get your Summit League Defensive Player of the Year to shore up the post defense and fix Bona leaving going to the NBA draft, but it's upgrading the defense at the wing spot, right? It's finding ways where you have an uber athletic Eric Daly Jr., as I talked about in the last podcast, who is athletic and can play multiple positions. He's going to help. UCLA probably is going to run teams off the 3-point line more often than not if they play a full court press, because they're going to force a lot of turnovers. Now, if that leads to fast breaks or wide open 3s, that's one thing. But for UCLA, they do need to shore up 3-point defense, because last year, UCLA was much, much worse at shooting the 3s, even worse at hitting the 3s than they were guarding the 3s. So in today's day and age, you've got to find a way to not be terrible at both. You can't be mediocre at both. You have to at least be solid in one if you're going to counteract the other. And if UCLA is good at both, that's probably going to be a recipe for a solid team. shooting a decent three ball, and also defending it as well. That's where you bring in Dominic Harris, who's a number 3 shooter in the country when it came to three-point shots, if he's even available healthy-wise. He has had that issue going across multiple schools, but that's why he's not needed with this depth for UCLA. That's where the scoring and shooting is going to depth. It's not just reliance on one guy. In 23-24, UCLA practically relied on a spectacular shooting effort from Stefanovic from 3, and they just couldn't get it because the team around him couldn't shoot consistently. Sebastian Mack was under 30% from 3. Dalen Andrews took a lot of made threes, including a 7 of 9 strong performance overall for Andrews to get his three-point numbers to where they were after a win against Oregon State in the Pac-12 tournament. So now you bring in Sky Clark, who I was reading the expectations based off transfers in 24-25 for Big Ten, right, under the 24/7 Sports article, and they wrote some fantastic numbers that were interesting. You bring in a guy for Sky Clark who is 40% in catch-and-shoot threes. You bring in Dominic Harris, who was closer to 45% from 3, right? So you got someone who's good at catch-and-shoot threes. You've got a dude who just knows how to knock down Trey Andres, right, in Dominic Harris, and he doesn't need to play a lot of minutes, but he can fight for minutes. You've got Stefanovic, who was pretty solid at the end of the year. Then you bring in other talent like Eric Daly Jr., who was over 30% from 3. You bring that with Kobe Johnson, and there have been people pointing out that with Isaiah Collier, who before he went to USC was projected to be the number 1 overall pick. That did not happen, but still someone who could help facilitate offensively. Johnson did dip, but still having more guys who can at least shoot 30% from 3, that's better than what UCLA had last year. Much better. So you're upgrading at depth, scoring, shooting, and defending the 3. And even if Johnson isn't going to have a bounce back year offensively, defensively, leadership, rebounding, all those things combined are making him a super valuable player where he should be starting as the 3 for UCLA. That's where I'm expecting him to be. So you get the 3-point shots, the 3-point defense, and we haven't even talked about the interior scoring just yet. The backcourt depth, which wasn't there, right? Dalen Andrews, he's backed up by guys that aren't even there anymore. And the guys that are coming in are leading scorers or close to leading scorers at their previous stops, or could easily put in 20 a game at a different school. We'll talk about more of that next on where UCLA basketball is improving under Mick Cronin on Locked On UCLA. Well, let's tell you about eBay Motors, all right? Because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Kind of like what UCLA Basketball is doing right now, leveling it up to peak performance. They've got whatever you want, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 120 million plus parts for your number 1 ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home that huge W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Cruising on, second segment here at Locked On UCLA. Let's continue to talk about the improvements made from UCLA. More scoring, more post play that will be involved, not fully focused on guys who are developing their games like Adai Mata, Berke was before he transferred out to Nebraska. And then you've got guys who are still trying to find their way in college basketball, like the Brandon Williams youngster, Devin Williams filling out strength-wise. You've got proven depth scoring in the post and interior potential defense, right? Again, this is where Eric Daly Jr.'s versatility will be important in the post. You're going to bring in probably a stronger Adai Mata, hopefully, or a Devin Williams in the post defensively to go along with the Summit League Defensive Player of the Year in Kyle. Then you've got Tyler Bilodeau, who is probably going to take the Adem Bona Award of most fouls committed by UCLA Bruin, and most likely to be in foul trouble, at least in the front court. because he committed well and beyond the most fouls for Oregon State. In some of his worst games and least productive performances with Oregon State were when he was in foul trouble. But the big thing for UCLA is continuing to read from numbers, right? UCLA, I did not fully realize this, how bad they were at shooting two-point shots. Like, they were one of the worst teams at making layups, right? So I'm looking at this article, again, 24/7 Sports. UCLA was one of the worst layup shooting teams in the country last year. That's what it says verbatim. Verbatim. So to bring in Bilodeau, who comes in, he can score, he can shoot too. He will add to that first segment part where he's able to shoot and score. But it's the ability to score at the rim, 71% at the rim. According to Ken Palm, 6th highest offensive efficiency rating. A lot of words to say efficiency at its finest for Bilodeau offensively. Maybe not defensively, but that's where we're going to help guys, and you're going to throw people in. And efficiency, it's not scoring, it's not the options, it's in addition doing it at an efficient clip. All right, you can score 80, but if you're doing it while running up and down, playing no defense, throwing up a lot of shots, Mick Cronin needs efficiency, because in the Big Ten, you're going to run into a wall of big 7-footers, right? Michigan just got a big 7-footer with their new coach, right? Then you've got Purdue, who always says everybody's going to be big, so sometimes you're not going to be as efficient in the paint, but UCLA is getting that. So remember, at the 4, UCLA had no production in the 23-24 season. So whoever rotates between there, you've got Daly Jr. You can mix in, dare I say, Kyle, although he plays like a 5. If UCLA wants to go double big lineup, you've got Kyle. We'll talk about him in a second. If he wants to slot it next to Damara, you're probably going to have a bit more efficiency in the post, because Bona, as great as he is and great as he was as a UCLA Bruin, he was not the offensive threat that UCLA wanted him to be and needed him to be as a sophomore at UCLA coming off a labrum tear, who is still learning the game again and again. For as good as Bona was, Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12, offensively, he made strides, but he couldn't take over a game. You've got guys who can take over games on the perimeter, in the paint. You can do it every which way. And now we're going to talk about William Kyle the third from South Dakota State. Guy who helped lead the Jackrabbits to a tournament title in the Summit League, got them there, Defensive Player of the Year, but also was huge. 6'9", not the biggest. He's going to have to fight with some big bodies, but that's why UCLA can change the rotation sometimes. This guy, 101 dunks, continuing on from what he did last year, right? In this 24/7 Sports article about the numbers of UCLA. So you got a guy who is over 70% at the rim. You think that's easy, but remember, how many times would UCLA go and throw up a nasty layup and miss it last year? Sometimes it was a wild drive from Sebastian Mack because UCLA wasn't doing anything offensively, and he just needed to take it to the hole and hope he'd get fouled. That didn't always happen at the end of the year as it did in the beginning of the year. Dylan Andrews, really good finisher at the rim, but if he's cold, he's cold. But you get Kyle, you got more options in the post. You're not just lobbing it to guys who aren't as strong and ready. You've got guys who know how to finish with authority at the rim between Kyle. Then you bring in Bilodeau, who can finish at the rim. And UCLA now has multiple people with size, multiple players who can come in, guard the paint, and score. And now UCLA also needs a solid rebounder. They need someone to dominate the rebounding category. You've got some players like a Kyle. You got all these guys who are coming in who can potentially rebound. But UCLA, I think the one thing they need in this year's team is a solid rebounder. Bona wasn't that guy. You had Stefanovic and Andrews who would, get some rebounds as guards. Bona was up there, but they need someone who's like an 8 rebounds per game guy. And Bilodeau could be that potential. Kyle can be that potential. Someone we're not even talking about right now that could be that potential with Mata. Maybe someone jumps in. We don't know. But UCLA needs a consistent guy who paces the team in leading with rebounds. Unless the team is so solid all around, grabbing the boards, attacking the glass, that's maybe an area of weakness that we need an individual standout at that position of need, right? Not just an official rebounder. There are guys who can do it. The talent is there. You just need someone to jump out. They've got the defenders. They've got the scoring options. And not that they can't rebound any of these guys, but from last year's team, they need a leader in the clubhouse to go out and make it his job to grab as many rebounds as possible. They have the talent to do it. They have what they need. You look at every area of weakness. All right, you're going to have replacement at your strongest post defender. It's pretty much equal, maybe a little less. You've got athleticism. You've got scoring. You've got better wing defense, better perimeter defense. You've got options to depth options, scoring, shooting, catch and shoot shooting, finishing at the rim. UCLA literally did it as much as they possibly could. Every hole on this roster, Mick Cronin went and said, I am going to fix that. And I'm going to turn my system this year, potentially with the full court press defense, into getting more guys minutes, more guys on the floor, and use it to my advantage. All the places you'll go if you're UCLA Bruin. Am I right? We'll find out. But they should be a top 10, top 15 team next year. Not flirting with top 25 like they are in the preseason, way too early top 25 rankings like some people have them. But I do think they'll be flirting with top 10, top 15 because every area of weakness has been emphasized by Cronin in the portal, not to forget the freshmen, Perry and Freeny, who are still in the mix, and the other guys who still have something to say about playing time because UCLA is overloaded with talent. You try to look at projections for all these players, even, looking at the outlets, like that guy's going to start. He's in the rotation, potential. UCLA, if you look at every player who's coming in, potential starter, should play 15, 20 minutes. But not everybody's going to. That is the talent and depth around the roster. Talent and depth. And holes, not many on this team. Now, it could backfire, but right now it's not looking like that for Mick Cronin. And that's why it's super, super exciting. Also, it's exciting. Corey Close's new class, the class of 24, standout. And who's standing out in her international play? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. I love sports so much, and I don't want them to stop. As the playoff seasons come to an end, the soccer tournament's coming to an end, and eventually we'll see the Summer Olympics come and go. The sports season's winding to an end. The playoff season, the tournament season, the big Olympics season will come to a close, and they won't be sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel helps keep me in the sporting mood and going whenever I want. Open the app and dream up bets anytime you or myself are in the mood. FanDuel is hooking up customers all the time with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Cruising on into this final segment for Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. We're talking more about what's coming up for UCLA women's basketball. A lot was made in recent years, the growth of the game, the talent. What is UCLA going to do next after Osborne leaves? They lost some talent, but they had a lot of talent returning, right? So much so that they now have the top 3 recruits in the class of 22, 2 coming in the portal, and yet here we are with this UCLA women's basketball team, and they're solid. This is a solid roster for Corey Close, but how do they get over the hump? They just can't seem to get past the Sweet 16, regardless of how talented they are, whether it's the Kiki Rices, the London Jones, right? They've got Hawkes, all these guys, all these ladies coming in with Lauren Betts. They've been growing into a super team. And South Carolina went on the dream season last year. You saw Caitlin Clark take the world by storm. Next year, the story will be told a lot by UConn, USC with Juju. And how is UCLA going to counter? Large in part, this regional part of the women's basketball game will be UCLA versus USC. Until you get some point to Connecticut or somewhere out in South Carolina, a large part of women's basketball from the Midwest, central part of the country, will be defined by UCLA versus USC. In the Big Ten, in the western part, some of the top 10 teams, it will be defined on this part of the country by UCLA and USC. And last year, SC got the better of them twice. in the Galen Center in the second matchup and in a heartbreaking second round of the second game or the semifinals of the Pac-12 tournament, where if UCLA had won that, they could have maybe gotten themselves a 1 seed in the tournament and much easier berth path in the NCAA tournament to a Final Four, which they did not end up getting to. So UCLA, what are they bringing in? What's the big class? Well, remember, UCLA is the only team in the country that's bringing in a class that involves 4 players, 3 of more which have 5-star ratings, in addition to a few transfers like Charlize Ledger-Walker, who hopefully can get healthy in time for a large portion of the season, who was dominant. You've got 2 other players like a Janiah Walker who comes in. You've got a stud class that is exciting for UCLA. But what is UCLA bringing in? Well, the big story was Elina Arnasalo, international product coming out of Finland. Remember, you've seen who are these international recruits? You always wonder, freshmen, youngsters, is it going to work? Regardless of the sport, for large in part, what's the international game going to look like? Well, Elina Arnasalo in the Eurobasket tournament right now in 2024, she's playing with Finland. 1, hoping she stays healthy. 2, dominant in some of her performances. Putting up close to 30 points in her first one. Got a start in international play in her second game. 15 points. A sniper from 3, including a 3/4 court buzzer beater. She was dominant in her international summer debut of sorts, right? In this Eurobasket tournament. She had some highlight tape. She's looking good. And that's not even including a lot of the local you got Avery Kane from St. Joseph High School. That's a really good girls basketball high school level program. Kendall Dudley, Zania Saka, all super talented pro players, right? You've got 4 dynamic players, according to Corey Close, committed to winning at the highest level. The Bruins are the only collegiate program with 3 or more 5-star recruits from the class of 24 committed to join them. And technically number 2 in the overall ranking class. I'm not sure how they are number 2. Maybe they're sleeping in Arnasalo like I was, but she's coming in, and what Close says is going to be a difference maker in your program, aggressive facilitator, a great shooter and passer. And what did she do in her Eurobasket tournament? She went out and drained threes. And when she was playing in her league over the seas, almost 20 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and nearly 3 steals per game. That's utter dominance. That's just something you might insert into the lineup. UCLA, the men and the women, might be so deep with talent, you're going to try and find ways to get everybody on the floor. And you've already got a team that's led by the floor general, that is Kiki Rice. You can't forget London Jones is going to want to get her shots. At some point, Gabby Hawkins is going to crack that starting 5. That's got to be coming. Lauren Betts, you've got the 3 transfers. And oh, wait, you've got Avery Kane, the Central Coast native who's coming in. She also averaged 20 points per game in high school for an elite program, played top-tier competition at St. Joseph High School in the Santa Maria area, right? That's some talent. And she was averaging so many points, solid. And in her junior season, 21 points per game. She was solid, right? So for St. Joseph's Kane, she was amazing. Then you got Kendall Dudley, who was top 15 in the Super 60 recruiting-wise and committed live on ESPN. First ever girls high school player to commit live. So UCLA's got a class that's breaking records, making waves, and finding ways to get a player who comes in and move the needle. Now, I'm wondering how much that Kendall Dudley is going to make a big-time impact immediately. And then you've got Big Z's Inia Sako, who's close to the top 25 in the Hoop Girls recruiting rankings. So you got players who are all top 25. And the last time UCLA had a class this good, it is the one that is currently juniors right now. And they're competing with a top-tier team in South Carolina. That's the freshman class. Now they're juniors with experience, both in the tournament against some top-tier competition, against South Carolina in the tournament, against the trash-talking LSU team, a loud team that won a championship and was competing in the Elite Eight. So they've played the best in top-tier competitions, top-flight programs these last few seasons. So you've got an experienced junior class. It's a class that was so talented that with just one transfer, one transfer last year, basically, one impactful transfer. They went from 15 to preseason number 2 or 3 in the country last year. So you add all that back, you're losing Charisma Osborne, and while they are losing some players to retirement, transfers, Osborne's the biggest one. And yes, Bessoir was hurt, but she didn't factor in last year after her injury in international play. You're replacing so much. You're replacing one player. And I think UCLA collectively with these 4 players, whether it's Arnosalo, whether it's Ledger Walker if she's healthy, whether it's everybody else, I think UCLA can replace Osborne with the collective talent they're bringing in. SC hit the portal with Lindsey Gottlieb. Close hit the portal, not as much, got some big names, but is also bringing in, right? You bring in a former Oregon State player in Gardner. You're bringing in the former Texas A&M player. Right? It's just they've got maybe not as high top tier transfers, but then she went more freshman heavy to continue the wave of talent. Now, maybe she didn't land the Jujus of the world, but UCLA got 4 elite players in that class and continue to hit the portal to get top-tier talent in the class of 22. Then you bring in what UCLA can do now with freshmen, transfers, growing a class. What they're proving to the rest of the country is they can grow a program. It's just taking the next level. And can one of these freshmen, from Dudley to Kane to Saka to Arnosalo, who is putting on a highlight reel performance with her international play right now, prior to the Olympics in this Eurobasket tournament, can UCLA have the talent? They absolutely do. They're almost getting forgotten about. Last year, they were the hype train. This year, they're forgotten about because of the team across town, across the street, in Los Angeles. Remember, because Paige Beckers is coming back for another year. South Carolina is going to have something to say about it. LSU probably has their replacement for Angel Reese. So there's a lot of talent, but I do think UCLA is ready to compete. And they've got a top 5 class. They've got number 2 in the country currently, 3, 4, whatever it is at this moment, with transfers and their best players, except one, all returning. That's excitement. That is excitement with this freshman class coming in. All right. So we'll talk more about it. It's going to be still quite a few months till we even get to college basketball season, but I'm excited now for both the men and women in college basketball for UCLA. All right. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. It's 8 clap time, baby. All right. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.